Hello and welcome to episode 240. Today we're talking what you need to know about property development margins. This week, Bob and I will talk about the things that affect developments and how you need to look at different margins to decide whether your project will be viable. Let's jump on into episode 240. Hello, today we're talking property development margins. Before we do, good morning, Bob.
Good morning, Hilary.
Good morning, Vietnam. We're not in Vietnam. We're just on the sunny coast.
Good morning, Australia.
Yes, good morning, Australia. So today we're going to be talking all things margins. But before we do, Marcus, the book's in the post to you. We had a chat yesterday, and you are actually the inspiration for this week's podcast because you had a little chat about margin. Not really. You just dropped in that everything needs to meet a particular margin. And I said, actually, no. So I thought, what a great podcast when people don't really understand which margins need to be reached and why you need margins and what a margin is and all that margin stuff. So Marcus, books in the post to you once we send you an email and get your address. And then also, we would love you to subscribe. And you know what we would also love? Some feedback. We would love you to ask us a question underneath the YouTube, what do you call that? It's the YouTube podcast that you watch. Ask questions, comment, tell us about your margin. Tell us what you thought or what margins were and then what you realised after the podcast. We would love to hear all that stuff. But anyway, Bob, that's my bit for getting the wheels rolling. So when you do that sort of thing, more people can find this podcast because we have so many people say, I love your podcast, but I didn't find it straight away. So there you go. That will actually help. So property development margins are one of the fastest ways to work out whether things are working and whether they're not. And different things have different margins. So Bob, let's just start with the absolute basic. What's a margin?
What's a margin? Well, let's take a step back. Feasibilities. So everything about property development really comes back to numbers. And so that's our feasibility is where we do our numbers. And so part of doing a feasibility is to check the margin. So feasibility doesn't just tell us income from sales less costs equals profit. It'll do that. But that doesn't tell the whole story. Just because something makes $300,000 profit, the question is it profitable?
Oh, see, that's to some people listening right now, or to you listening right now. It makes 300,000 profit. Is it profitable? The average person would be like, of course it is. You just said it makes 300,000 profit. Do you want to unpack now or should we wait a bit before?
At least do profit later, maybe.
Yeah, we'll drop into that.
So the margin, simply, it's not too complex a mathematical equation. It's your profit expressed as a percentage of your total costs. So if your total costs were, say, $1 million and you made $200,000 profit, your profit of $200,000 is 20% of your total costs of $1 million. Therefore, your margin is 20%. But it's called different things. We just mentioned margin. It's sometimes called the developer's margin, the return on cost, or the margin on cost. So all those things are the same if you hear them said out there. So that's the margin.
Bob, where is there?
Out there. Out there is cosmos.
In cosmos.
In the world of the cosmos of property development. So that's what the margin is. So it's your profit as a percentage of your total costs. When I say total cost, I mean every cost, including interest, including agents' commissions, all your construction, purchase land, everything. That's what the margin is. And it's an important number.
So when you look at a deal, is that the thing you look at first, or what is the number you look at first to decide whether you're going to move forward?
It probably is the number I look at because I would have had a target that I'd be looking for based on that type of project. And so I need to see what that is. The second thing I'd look at might be the dollar profit because that's always nice to know. But it's not, that won't dictate whether it's profitable to the, what I mean by profitable, I mean profitable enough for you to do it. The time, the effort and everything involved in doing that project, is it worth your time? But more importantly, how's the finance you think about it? And we can cover that maybe later.
Yeah, we're going to go down two roads here. I think we're going to go down that finance road, but we're also going to talk about because no margins are equal. So we're going to talk about the differences. And yesterday when I spoke with Marcus, the conversation went like, because the margin, you always need 20%, right? Okay, well, let's answer that one, because that is one of the misconceptions that people have about property development. Now, it used to be, you go.
Yeah, a lot of people that are experienced in property development have heard this number of 20% and they think, oh, that's what it's got to be for everything. That's not the case at all. It can vary. And what I mean it can vary, obviously, when you're doing a feasibility, that margin can vary. If you've got a project that doesn't stack up, it'll be a low margin. But as the smaller and simpler and easier the project is, the lower the margin can be. Let's not look at a small project. Let's look at a big one. Let's say you're going to do a residential apartment block, 60 apartments, okay? That is a big project. There's a lot of dollars involved in it. It's going to take quite a while to build and quite a while to sell, and particularly if you've got to get off-plan sales. So that is that type of project. You would want a bigger buffer, a bigger margin, because it is a longer project, a lot more dollars involved, quite a lot of complexity in doing it. Now go down to the other end. What about a little subdivision, a 2 or a 3 lot subdivision? Well, that's right down the other end, isn't it? Because it's small, there's not a lot of dollars involved, it's pretty quick to do. And in that case, we're not even building a building. So the margin that, let's say, a financier might want, or that you should want on that apartment block, that margin would be quite a lot higher than the one for the little subby, because it's so small and safe and quick.
And then I suppose there's everything between, Bob. So you've just given the big example and then the small example, and then there's the examples of everything in between. So, and that was a great point you brought up about the level of complexity determines the rate of the margin for the deal. So different products have different rates. What's the reasoning behind it? It's obvious to you and I, but to you listening, you might be thinking, I wonder what that is.
Well, you might say it's riskier, let's say.
Is that a word, or is it more risky?
I don't know.
Riskier, mate?
You're teaching me grammar, that's true. So if you think about it, there's more things that could go wrong with the big project. It's over a longer period of time, so markets can change. I mean, markets can go up too. In fact, they go up more than they go down. So it might be a good thing that it's a longer project. But there's a lot more money involved. Like you could talk about it as being risky, complex. An apartment block is complex to build. It's complex to design. You have to build the whole building, the whole 60 units, and sell them and settle them before you see $1 come back. And it might be 3.5 years later. So you'd need a bigger buffer. And the bigger buffer is the margin on that sort of thing, rather than a little 2-lot subdivision, particularly something like a splitter, where you could be in and out in 6 months. You don't even need to get a development permit with a splitter. You can go straight in there and come in 2 lots and so on. You're not going to retire on the profit from that, that's for sure. But very quick, very easy, very simple. You can get by with a much lower margin. So this whole 20% thing's been around even when I started, back in the early 80s. 20%. It's been a benchmark, and unless you're a real developer, you just keep thinking it's 20%. But it's not. And that's why.
So, but we're talking that we need a margin. Now, what, apart from the fact that, it's to tell whether it's a viable project, what is the reason that we need the margin to reach a certain percentage for each product? What's that reason behind that?
Well, you just said, when you said the word viable, that's an interesting one. I use the word profitable. If you make $1, it's profitable because you made a profit of $1. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about something that's worth the time, the effort, like any investment, there's an element of risk. It doesn't matter what you buy. So is it worth all of that? And if it is, then you do it. And so how you measure that on a project is by the margin. And for projects up to 2 years, maybe even up to 3, it's a good indicator. If you were doing a big CBD office block, 60 stories, is going to take 5 years, that the margin has less meaning because the margin doesn't take into account time. You can have a project that makes a 20% margin, 2 projects that make a 20% margin. One project might take 18 months and the other might take 24. They're the same margin.
They're different.
If I had a choice between the two, you'd probably do the one that was quicker because you get your money back quicker and you can move on to do other things with that money. Whereas they both had the same margin. And the thing is, the margin doesn't take into account time.
And that determines profit.
Yeah, but up to 2 years, maybe even 3 at a stretch, that's okay. There is a thing called internal rate of return, which actually takes into account the time and the time value of money, but we're going way too complex here. We don't need to go down the internal rate of return path. We'll stick to margins.
You're scaring people right now. Okay, so, and I used viability. You were talking about profitability. But I suppose profitability is what it is, first of all, then adding that time factor. But the viability, really I'm going down that reason we need the margin now is for the finance.
Yeah, and there's a difference between profit and profitability. Profit is just the profit you make. I said, you wouldn't do one to make $1, but technically if you did a project and you made $1, you've made a profit. Is it profitable? Well, not really, because $1 was never going to be worth 18 to 24 months of your time and effort and everything that you do.
And what else could
to make $1?
Yeah, exactly.
You're better off going mowing someone's lawn for $50 than do that. So that's the difference when I'm talking about the difference between profit and profitability. And in your case, viability is a good word. Viable. Is it viable? Because that takes into account, is it worth all my time and effort and everything to do this? But it's not always our decision. I think that's where you're going.
I want to go down 2 roads here because one, I want to talk about the money made profit and I want to talk about finance. I think because there's that point where people think, well, it makes money, so I should do it. And that's not always the case because of reasons that we understand. So let's go down the finance route, Bob, if you want to unpack why the margin is vital. I'm going to say the word vital before you go jumping in and buying a site, because if you do jump in and buy a site because you think it's a great idea and it makes a profit, doesn't mean it's viable to somebody who's going to loan you the money to carry on the financier. Do you want to touch?
Yeah, so when we're doing a property development, most of the money comes from the financier. It could be 80%. So let's just use that as an example. We're putting in 20% to cover 20% of the costs. We put that in first. Then the financier comes along, puts in the other 80% after we put in our 20. So they're putting in most of the money. They're putting in 4 times as much money as we are. And financiers aren't in business to lose money. So whenever they finance a deal, they have to look at the deal and in simple terms, is it viable? In other words, is it worth their time, effort and risk to lend 80% towards this project? And particularly in commercial finance, which is nearly what all development these days, pretty much commercial. You don't really get retail finance to do deals anymore. But in the commercial world of finance, that margin is what they use to see if a deal's worthwhile. And so you might like the dollar amount, but that might not be the right margin. Let's say for this particular type of project, the financier wants to see a 17% margin and yours shows 12, but it's showing $250,000 profit. So you think, $250,000, I've got to work 4 years full time to make that money. And here's an opportunity of making 4 years wages, just working 4 or 5 hours a week, part time. And so very tempting, I'll do it. Well, yeah. But the problem is, financier doesn't think it's viable because it's only 12% and they want to see 17%. Therefore, you won't get the money. So you don't get the money, you can't do it. Even though you'd love to get your hands on the 250, it's not enough. That amount of profit, that 250,000 profit, as a percentage of your total costs, is too low. It's 12%. Financier wants 17.
That's a no from him.
That's a no from the financier.
It's a no deal.
If you had a lot of cash, right? You've been left a lot of money, you've made a lot of money, you've stole a lot of money, wherever you got a lot of money, and you want to do your own projects without using a financier, well, that's fine. You can go for whatever margin you like.
It doesn't actually matter because at that point, it's only about profit. And there's no one else measuring that profit against aim and deciding whether it's viable.
You should still set your benchmarks for yourself. Like even if you're not using a financier, like you shouldn't be jumping into projects that show 5 or 6, 7%. Because that compensation will tell you it's too close to the wind. But if you did use your own cash, that's about the only time you can make that call and nobody else cares.
That's the reason I wanted to go down that road, and you just ticked both boxes so people can understand if they did have enough cash, they could do that. What about, so we're talking about the margin mainly because of getting that finance, that we need, finance approved, and that's another celebration day in development that people don't talk about. We celebrate, yay, finance was approved, which is kind of weird when you think about it. How often, I mean, we've got some big things going, just doing a childcare and some industrial blocks, and every time it's like, yay, finance. So finance is one of the major reasons that we need to reach that certain margin unless you're bankrolling your own. But Bob, also the requirement for the margin, the profitability, is affected by, things that might potentially hold up, slow down, go wrong, correct?
Yeah, well, the margin you start off with might not be the margin you finish with. So the first time we have a look at the margin is when we're looking at a site, we're doing our due diligence. We're looking at other things in due diligence, can we get a sewer connection? Can we get a stormwater connection? All those things we do when we do due diligence. And then we do our feasibility once we know that we crunch our numbers and we see that it's viable, that it's profitable, that everything's good about it. And really, we're looking at it through the eyes of finance. I mean, you say we celebrate when we get finance. We do because it's such an important thing.
It's a milestone.
It is. So we found the site. That's a milestone. We've done our due diligence to make sure it stacks up, done our feasibility, and it shows the required margin. That's a milestone. But we're not going to get to do it if we don't get the money. And so that's very important. Once we get the money, once we found the site, it stacks up, we got the money. It's just procedural. We've got to get a development permit, building permit, build it, sell, right? It's procedural. And that's why getting the money is a big deal. And that makes or breaks it. I mean, with most developers, we borrow money. We don't use our own cash to do a whole project.
That was another point that came up in a conversation yesterday. You're way better off borrowing money.
Well, you've got the power of gearing when you borrow. But there are constraints. I mean, you could borrow 80% and maybe even get some mezzanine finance. And so you end up putting 10% equity in, which means you're getting a big return on your invested capital, but you're also very highly geared. So the financiers, they work out the balance for them when they lend on a particular loan to value ratio. Like I just said they might lend 80%, you put in 20%.
When you said that, I thought that's going to confuse people with the 20% margin as well.
Margin's got nothing to do with it.
That was, when you did say that, I was like, wrong number, Bob. That's going to really throw people. But anyway.
I think we've explained it well enough.
Yeah.
Not to throw people.
Yeah.
But, that's why it's so important. That's why we celebrate when we get the finance. It's a big milestone. Because once we've got that, we know, okay, getting the development, building permit and building is very procedural. Town planners, architects, builders, that's easy. And then the marketing. And so that's when we get our first sales, we celebrate again. There's lots of reasons to celebrate along the way.
Oh, yeah, there's so many.
I saw a photo of you at the one of the industrial buildings the other day.
Celebrating
because the walls are up.
And it's the first time I'd seen it live, apart from when we first bought that site, looking at it from the road. We couldn't get near it because you couldn't even drive near it. So there's you, myself, Aaron, look at, I think it's that one there. I think it's that block there. But it was really good actually standing and seeing the walls up. That was exciting.
And that's the celebration.
Yes.
Walls up. Takes on 3 dimensions then.
Oh, yes. And I broke through the fence on Sunday, which is probably illegal. But anyway, should we cut that out?
No.
I can say it.
Shaking.
Okay. So what's the margin on that one, Bob?
Well, that's a good margin. It's between 25 and 30%. So when we first did it, it's in that range of high 20s. Now it is an industrial development. Well, there's an example. We're talking about margins. Industrial developments typically have a higher margin than residential because they're considered by financiers and valuers to be a higher risk type of project. It's a more volatile type of product, and therefore they expect a higher margin. And so,
what were they looking for on that project? Did you know?
They're probably, as far as financing it goes, they were probably looking at 22, 23.
Okay, I thought it was 26. I thought 22.
Well, we're up closer to 30 because we bought well and we got a really good builder at a good price, but also because we use investors in most of our projects, and so we have to make sure our investors get a good return. So the better the project is, the more profitable, the better off everybody is. But
my master, I thought we were sitting at 28% on that. That's
right. Probably were because we're always adjusting the feasibility. So when you start off and do a feasibility at the beginning to see if it's viable, use your word, everything is an estimate, and other than maybe the land, which is an actual. If the land is for sale at X dollars, well, we know that. But everything else we're estimating the consultant's fees and council fees and everything else. As you work your way through a project, the estimates get replaced with an actual. So you'd have an estimate of what you think it's going to cost to build. And when you actually get a building contract, then you know what it's going to cost to build.
Changes that number?
Yeah. And wouldn't be great if it was less. And sometimes it is. So by the time you've completed a project and adjusted your feasibility all the way through, you now have one that's based on actuals and no estimates.
I remember at the start of that project, we put in the what's the power at the front there? We put in the
the power. Yeah, we had a transformer.
Yeah, so the first phase, we put a transformer in, and then we realised we didn't need one. Took that out. That was the saving. That adjusted the margin because that was a $250,000 saving, and so that was like yes, but it had already been done with that in. So then the adjustment was it got taken out, but then it got readjusted and it's back in. But there's a reason for that because that will impact sale prices. So there's that estimate. So because we had that transformer in place, it means the likelihood of higher sale prices because other people don't have it. Where earlier there's we're doing all those things to make it a better opportunity for the people purchasing. So that's an example, you're right, of that when a higher margin is required just on something like that.
Yeah, and what's helped us there as well is that the value of the land's gone up in the meantime.
Another actual.
An actual, yeah. So the land had a price, obviously, and that's what we paid. Now that we're building it, there's obviously a period of time gone on between when we first did our fee zone now. The land value in that area, industrial land's gone up quite a lot. So that helps our profit margin.
Okay, well, what's been the lowest margin that you've had? And you're like, this is skinny, but I reckon it's going to be okay. And you've gone to financier for.
Yeah, so I've done some real little projects where the margin was low, and it was low because they were so small. But I can remember one I did, which was 6 townhouses, and a fellow who owned the site had an old house on it, got a development permit to do 6 townhouses. I think it was 6. Might have been 5. Anyway, doesn't matter. It's a while ago. I think it was 5. There was 3 at the front, which were 3 stories, and then 2 townhouses at the back, which were 2 stories. And I liked it because it had a DA, and I wanted to do a project and get cracking. So it was, I knew what I was buying. But then I also knew that the 3 stories cost more than 2 stories to build, and they're quite tight designs. I mean, had I started from scratch, which maybe I should have, I would have built 4 on that side instead of 5, and I took on someone else's DA. But I wanted to get into it, and so the 2-bedders were 3 stories. I don't mind doing 3 stories, 3-bedders, but these were 2-bedders, so it's starting to get a little bit tight, and everything was tight about. Even the driveway going to the back too was really tight. I thought, I'm going to do it anyway. And so the margin was the absolute lowest you could get. And there's even a few things I thought, I wonder if these are going to sell or rent okay, because the internals were quite tight. But I just wanted to do it. And it did have the margin. And I knew I could scrape over. And
were you nervous?
Well, not too nervous. The builder I've done a number of projects with. And so I was able to get a good build price by sitting down with him and really working through everything. Like, I knew him really well. And I said, look, we got to get the tightest build price we can, because it's just barely sitting on the margin, And so there were, we worked our way through, even changed a few things that were cheaper to build without really affecting anything. Got the structural engineer, changed a few things as well, some cantilevers, and I really had to work that thing over just to get it to the base margin, and got there, but it was like I'm watching every cent on the way, and dug into the contingency account, which I knew I would. But that's like a good little buffer to have, and like got me by the skin of my teeth, I suppose. But I'll probably, at the end of it, probably less than 15%. It was 15 was it 15%? No, it would have been more than that. I hit the margin for the financier anyway. It ended up, I made a bit less profit than that. So the margin at the end was such that I wouldn't have been able to get finance had I used that margin at the beginning. But the margin at the beginning just got me over the line. But as that old Italian Tommy was, go broke making a profit. And so, I probably made about 80% of what I expected to make. But that's still good.
Yeah, and that's kind of that other side. Once you've got the finance, as long as you know you're going to make that profit, and it's, sort of a slight contradiction here, but it's enough to put the time, effort, and money into. Were you using your own money at the time?
That was that was with a couple of mates.
Right.
So we knew what was going on, but I'm just saying that it started off really skinny. The margin just got there. I only just got there because I really worked with my friend the builder to get that really tight. And I did everything just to get the margin that you just scrape by.
I think that also brings in, and we've talked about this so many times, the necessity for relationships. The necessity for you to have that good relationship with your builder so you can have a discussion, mate, this is going to be skinny. Can you help me out? What can we do? And it would have been that, would it? Like, what can we do, rather than you being sort of a dictatorship? You have to do that. It would have been, how do we make this happen? Was it a sort of that sort of conversation?
Oh, yeah, because I've done probably 3 projects with him previously. And there was some design things that we had to alter that made it a bit cheaper, but didn't affect the sale price. That helped, because I needed to get what initially looked like the build price. I needed to get that down just to hit the margin, because that's one of the big, the land and construction are your 2 big cost items. That can be 80% of your total cost items. Yeah, that was one. That was pretty skinny, that one.
Mm.
But I've also had plenty of projects that have finished with a high profit.
Is that more often? What would be the ratio, do you think? And okay, let's call the numbers: over $1.3 billion in development and climbing. What would be the ratio of margins coming in under, still profitable, still great deals, or those coming over? So, we're not saying they were tears, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Look, it could be half, but it actually mathematically should be more. If you think about properties going up in value, like your sale prices, properties go up for a longer period of time than they either remain stagnant or go down. And we know that because properties keep going up, but they don't go up in a straight line. And sometimes even if there's like an oversupply, they can come down a little bit before they level out, before they go up again. But properties obviously over time go up more than they go down. Therefore, the price when you do your feasibility at the beginning compared to the price you sell at the end, in a majority of cases, it will be a higher price when you sell in probably 80% of the market. But why I only said a half is there's always some costs that pull you back a bit too.
I was just going to ask you that, Bob. When should you walk away? Is it more when you know it's skinny? At what point do you go, no?
Well, you do it at the beginning if you want to know when. You do it before you ever buy it. That really tight skinning one I talked about, like it's easy in retrospect when you look backwards. I would have been better spending another 6 months and probably putting 4 on there instead of 5. Because I would have done 2 stories, not 3. There would have been 3 bedders, not 2, and there would have been a better size and glad to get squeezed on the sale price, people wanting to buy it. It would have been better for me to have spent that 6 months and done 4 instead of 5, because as we know, more isn't always better.
What a great thing for you to be able to share, Bob, and even admit, and retrospectively, and have that as a lesson to work forward with. I would have been better spending the extra time to put a product on there that the market wanted, and that's just, again, a podcast that we've done probably multiple times in different varying ways, but it's always about what the market wants. It's about what the financier wants. It's not always about what you want. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if you're interested in learning about property development, we offer a fabulous mentoring program. You can reach out below. There's always the link where you can have a chat and find out about what we have and how it works with us. The other thing is we have our workshop coming up in May, the 1st, 2nd and 3rd of May. It's on the Gold Coast. It is a phenomenal event and you will want to be there. You will learn all about margins. You will learn all about property development. Not just that, you will have a fantastic networking opportunity with other people just like you, or other people wanting to get into property development, or people who are already doing property development, and we would love to see you there. Once again, you can reach out to us if you're interested in coming along to that. So there's a link below for all of those things. We would love to hear from you, Bob. As usual, thank you for your fabulous insights this week. I enjoyed this podcast because I think it's a bit of an eye-opener, and people listening, you listening, will have a little bit more of an understanding. Marcus, look forward to chatting with you soon. And Bob, we'll catch everybody next week, eh?
We will.
Bye.
Bye now.